Hello friends! This is Maria Malenkova all the way from Moscow, Russia for you today, Swing Harbour 2020 online edition. This is a class on 3 of my favorite solo blues movements. Now it was actually pretty hard for me to choose just 3 of my favorite moves because I kind of love all the moves, But I decided to go with some that are, to my mind, more distinguished as blues kind of movements, so that you learn them, and when somebody sees you on the dance floor, they would be like, that person probably took some blues classes, This will spice up your slow dancing, no matter what it is that you do actually. In solo jazz, you can use this as well, but traditionally, those movements are described as Jook joint movements. So first of all, what's a Jook joint? You might have heard that traditionally blues dancing is divided into Jook joint and ballroom. So ballroom dancing was the dancing that was done in the ballrooms, as you could have guessed, like the Savoy, for example. Jook joint is also the name derived from the name of the place where those dances were done. I'm actually going to give you a quote from an awesome book which is called Jooking, The Rise of Social Dance Formations in African American Culture, written by Katrina Hazard-Gordon. This is an awesome book for you to read, to educate yourself, to know more about the dances that we're dancing. Zora Neale Hurston defined the Jook as the word for a Negro pleasure house. It may mean a bodily house, it may mean the house set apart on public works where men and women dance, drink, and gamble. Often, it is a combination of all these. Musically speaking, the Jook is the most important place in America, for in its smelly, shoddy confines has been born the secular music known as the blues, and in blues has been founded jazz. The singing and playing in the true Negro style is called jooking. The songs grow by incremental repetition as they travel from mouth to mouth and from juke to juke for years before they reach outside ears. Hence, the great variety of subject matter in each song. In juke joints and honky-tonks, African-American dance culture crystallized into exportable forms. For unlike the plantation frolics, the jukes and honky-tonks were almost always open and the dancing was free. The dance halls of the period, although public, were to some degree restrictive, and brothels and saloons had a different focus. It was the juke and its derivative forms that provided black, lower, and working classes with the primary public arena for dance. So, as you see, we're talking here about the very early form of the dance that we know today. So this is prior Lindy Hop, prior the ballrooms, before the swing was born. This is in the juke joints, where juke joint blues was played by this, one maybe musician with a guitar and maybe a pianist later on. So what I'm going to talk about today are the moves that were born right there and then. But before we go on to explore these particular moves, I have to give you some of the technical part, the blues basics, the pulse and the posture, some things that we cannot skip in order to be on the same page about this. So the posture that we use in blues dancing is not really much different from the solo jazz posture, for example. Of course, there are some nuances when it comes to partner dancing, some things about the connection, but for now, we don't really care about that. I'm gonna just quickly run through the main points of the posture when you're dancing solo. So what we're looking for is the knees are slightly bent, and the weight is slightly shifted to the front of your foot, right? So more to the ball of your feet, but not too much. This will be easier if you just stand up straight and then slightly shift your way forwards and then backwards and then find the middle and then again slightly forward. This is it. You don't need more. Then we should bend our knees, yeah? We don't have to stay bent all the time, but there should be some air in there. We are certainly on smooth feet here. We need to be able to bend the knees and straighten them up easily in order to move. So we don't clasp our knees, we don't lock them. They are free and relaxed. One more important thing that we have to talk about is the pelvic area, where the center of our body is, which you've probably heard a lot about, the magical center of our body, which we should move first, right? So the center of our body is kind of behind my belly button, right? There is inside me this center. So what I'm looking for is not having this kind of bend. This is a very common mistake. And also not shifting too much forward with the hips. So we need to find something in the middle. Not here and not too much in front, but find this middle, yeah? And draw your tail kind of inside. Your tailbone should be looking straight down to the floor. Yeah, this is it. Then we bend our knees, yeah? And we almost there. One more important thing is the chest. So I try to stay open at all times, even if I'm going down, yeah, if I'm doing something like this, I try to shine up from here like the sun shining from my chest upwards. And the shoulders, draw them to the ears, draw them back, draw them down, there you have it. So shining up, always staying like this. And try to look over the horizon with your head. So don't collapse your neck as well. We can be very straight in the shoulders, but then this happens. So watch out for that as well. We have our knees bent, our pelvis drawn inside, the tailbone looking down, the shoulders rolled up, back, and down, and the chest shining up. One more important thing is the feet. I would encourage you to always stay a little bit open, so never like this, yeah? You can be parallel sometimes, but definitely, well, this could be like an artistic expression, for example, in the TikToks. Yeah, of course, we go in and out. But generally speaking, a little angle. This is extremely important when we're turning, for example, something like this, so that it doesn't look like I'm stepping this way, yeah? This is not too great. And you can probably catch that on some pictures of people dancing when somebody's turning and they turn and their foot goes like this. This is not too pretty, so mind that as well. Now that we have our posture, let's talk a little bit about the pulse. So generally, the bounce or the pulse can be done in two directions. We can go down, 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 or we can go up, 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 at least when we're talking about the swing dances, right, about this family. But in blues dancing as well, depending on the style of blues you're dancing, depending on the style and the music again, because the blues dance is an umbrella term and there are many dances included in that, the pulse will change. Sometimes it will go down, down, down. Sometimes it will go up, up, up. But the basic version of it that people learn first usually is this kind of stuff. So it's the opposite of what we're used to in solo jazz. If I count my pulsing, on the end, I'm going down, I'm grounding myself. This means that I'm shifting my weight on one foot and sitting down on it so that my knee is bent and my other leg is relaxed and hanging here. And then on the count, I grow up, right? So the important thing here is to not go over your height. This never happens to us. We go from here to natural height, and then back, and then to natural height. So with a count, it would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. To the side, so that you can see my posture. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. One more important thing about the pulse is the sway in the hips. So some people describe it as pendulum, like this kind of part of the clock, you know, when you have a clock, and this part which is going chuk, 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 chuk. So this is what we still have to keep in our hips, a little bit of this. So backwards and forward together with up and down. Yeah, so boom, 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 boom. Yeah, you can see my lower part of the body is moving, but there is no bend. Yeah, this is important. There is a difference. I'm not just bending my hips and going like this. Yeah, I'm relaxed and I'm more, my tailbone is looking more down, yeah, than back. Yeah, it's going down, but still my hips have this freedom of moving back and forth. In terms of footwork, some people say that the basic step would be step and touch or step collect. I would argue that this is maybe a little bit overrated in terms of a basic step, because we can really go back and forth between step, 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 and step, touch, or maybe even step, touch, and touch, and touch. And all of this is kind of very basic. So we're going to work on the step touch as well. But I would encourage you to think outside the box from the start and to not perceive this as the only basic that you have. Just think about stepping, right? Just shifting weight. There's nothing like step, step, triple step in here. It's just the step, step, and sometimes you just don't shift your weight and stay in place. If you decide to do some touches, step and touch, don't forget that touch is basically the same as the step in terms of pulsing. So we need to ground ourselves before going up. And also we need to place our heel completely on the ground every time we step. Step and touch, and step and touch. From the back, step, collect, and step, collect. Step, collect, step, collect. The two problems that can arise right here is either you do a very big step and you forget your foot and it looks like step and touch and step and touch, or another version is to go step and touch very close to the other leg. Yeah, step and touch, step and touch. I always try to leave the space of my shoulders, yeah, approximately between the legs. And also when we step, this is a very important point, we're actually pushing from the foot that we're starting from. So instead of picking a place where I'm gonna step, putting the foot down and then shifting the weight, I try to first shift my weight, so move the center, move your belly button to the side, yeah, and then the foot just magically appears right there so that I don't fall. The feeling of pushing is very similar to the feeling of skiing or ice skating. So every time I need to make a step, I ground myself, I prepare, I go down, my knee is relaxed and bent, and then I push from the ground. But I kind of push not upwards, yeah, because I don't want to go over my height. I push parallel to the floor so that I can cover some distance. It doesn't have to be big. In fact, I would encourage you to start with smaller steps. It's going to be easier for you, and to think from your hip area so that you want to move this part of your body. Let's do a couple of big pushes like you're ice skating, and then remember that feeling and bring it to your normal steps. So push, push from the ground, push. We bend our knee, we prepare, and then we push from the ground. Think about the hip area. Push. The center is moving. Push. Try different directions. Push and push and push and ground. Push, ground. Push, ground. Push, ground. Now let's do normal steps, but with the same feeling of the pushing from the ground. So step, 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 ground, step, ground, step, ground, push, and push, and push, and push. And we can as well add some touches in there. Push and touch and push and touch and push and touch and push and touch. Let's try it quickly to the music. Five and six, and find the pulse. 1 and 2,
Woke up
3
this
and 4,
morning
5, 6,
with an
7,
awful
8,
aching
1,
head.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Just steps.
Yes,
1,
I woke
2,
up this
3,
morning
4, 5, 6,
with an
7,
awful
8,
aching
1,
head.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Step touch.
'Cause
1,
my man
2,
just
3,
left me
4,
with a
5,
room
6,
in an
7,
empty
8,
bed.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Don't forget to straighten your knees as well. So both phases are really important. The phase of grounding down and the phase of I'm completely straight. But this is not for a long time, so this is important, yeah? If we try and kind of measure how much time we spend grounded and how much time we spend upwards, it's kind of like almost the same, but we're leaning towards the floor because gravity. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So we briefly up and then we go down. So this might look boring for you, or maybe you already know all this stuff, but in fact, without this basic approach, without this understanding of how we're stepping, what's the pendulum move, what's the pulse, we cannot really do anything on top of that, because everything we do on top has, in fact, this kind of a blues feel to it. Of course, you have to keep in mind that what I'm giving you is like the basic of the basic. This is a neutral way to do this, right? You can then alter it and add variation and turn the pulse inside out and do it completely the opposite way, like this, yeah, and it's still gonna be fine. Or do some things without the pulse, or transfer your pulse to another part of your body. There are many things to be said about blues dancing, but for now we're just sticking with the basics, and we keep in mind this as our rule for now, so we can build on some of the moves that we're gonna learn today. Now, the first move that we're gonna learn today is called the grind. It actually used to be a whole separate dance. As many names of the moves that we do today, they used to be just dances. For example, the fishtail was a separate dance, as was the grind. Let me give you a quote. Dances in the Jooks included the Charleston, the shimmy, the snake hips, the funky butt, the twist, the slow drag, the buzzard lope, the black bottom, the itch, the fishtail, and the grind. Most of these trace back to Africa and can be observed there today, well as in African and African American communities around the world. So the grind looks like this. Da, 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 da. And from the back, and 1, and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now this is a move for hips, as all of the moves that we're gonna touch upon today are, because this was one of the things that distinguished juke joint dances from, say, the ballroom dances. It was a lot about the hip movement. So what happens there is I lift up my leg and then I push with my hips to the side. Yeah, so I lift and then I push and then I land. If I ground myself a little bit more, it's gonna be still ha, ha, ha. To find our hips and to make a better push, let's try and move from side to side. Yeah. And then backwards and forwards. And then in circles. And see how much movement there is that you can make with your hips. So our goal is to go from one side to another, right? So from here to here, or from neutral to the side. This is what's gonna happen. We're gonna push our hip out a little bit. What happens when I lift is there's actually a contraction here between my rib cage and my hip. So you have here a soft part of your body between the ribs and the hip. So this part should go squeeze, right? So we try to lift the hip to the ribs. Lift and then push out. Yeah? Lift, push. Lift, push. Lift, push. Lift, push. Now make sure you make this movement from the hips. So the hip goes first and then the upper body comes after. Yeah? Lift, push the hip, step, and then the upper body comes. Lift, push, step. Lift, push, step. Boom, boom, boom. Also, don't forget to ground yourself after you've done the first step. So we started from the grounded position. This is still our pulse where we go from down to up, kind of, yeah? So we ground ourselves, then we push from the leg that we stand on, which we've practiced. We push, yeah? And then we ground again. So lift, push, hip goes forward, ground. Also, try and make it smaller. Yeah, it doesn't have to be this big. It can literally be on the spot. The emphasis here is on the hips, not on the width of your step. Let's try it to the music. Find the pulse. Five, 6, 7, and 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Faster. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7, and 8. Slow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. A couple of things that we can do here is to play with our posture a little bit, maybe shifting the hips forward. Then it's going to create this kind of attitude in what we do. Yeah, boom, boom, boom. Yeah, you can keep the hands here, kind of like this maybe, or find a beautiful way. Also, what we can do is play with the levels. So I can go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, for example, to the one side, yeah, or maybe even to different sides. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. Yeah, the important thing here is to go from the hips again, yeah, pushing out the hip, and then the rest of the body comes. Let's try those two things to the music. So we're gonna try the hands, and we're gonna try changing the levels and also going several times to one side and several times to the other side. Let's do slow ones to the side. So 2 counts for one step. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then fast and changing the levels. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 5, 6, 7 and 8. Let's do a couple of times to the music. 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Moving on to the next move, it's the 4 corners. It's an absolute classic in blues dancing. The 4 corners also gets a quote from the book. The dances performed in honky-tonks were part of a cultural cycle, many of whose elements resurfaced years later. For example, the leg gestures of the Charleston returned in the late 1950s and early 1960s as the mashed potatoes. The hip gesture of the black bottom returned as a dance embellishment in the Lindy Hop and Jitterbug, appeared later in the Mooch, and even later as a popular dance of the late 1960s and early 1970s, the 4 corners. The cyclical reemergence continues to mark the African American dance vocabulary. So, as you see, the name 4 corners appeared much later, but some form of the original move was probably performed as part of the black bottom dance. Now, why is it called the 4 corners? Let me show it to you first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 8 from the back. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 5, 6 and 7, 8. The 4 corners are actually the 4 points where we move our hips. So if we try and draw it, it's going to be from here to here to here to here. So front, diagonal to the back, another back, diagonal to front. Yeah? But we try to imagine it parallel to the floor. So we go from here to here to here to here. Yeah? This is what our hips do. But let's try and break it down into 2 several parts. One of them is a circle. So we go from the front to the back and then to the front. And then we go the opposite direction. Tunk and tunk. Yeah? I'll show you from the back. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 5, 6, 7 and 8. The important thing here is to let your hands hang freely. Yeah? Just let them be in front when you go back, and let them be back when you go in front. Now at the end of that circle, we can actually pick up our feet, so it becomes a step. Have a look. 1 step, 2 step. 1 step, 2 step. So we step in front. 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. It doesn't have to be a big step. You can just pick your heel off the floor. So to finish it up, we need to add the hip bump. What's that? It's quite similar to what we just did in the grinds, but there is another kind of variation to it. So we need to stand on one leg, shift your weight completely and relax into it, like just sit on your hip. This leg now, my right leg, is completely free. There is no weight. And I try and straighten it up, moving my hip to the front. Yeah? So when I'm sitting down, my hip is kind of a little bit backwards and I need to shift it to the front. Yeah? So this is what happens. I place my heel to the floor, I straighten up my knee and my hips go cha. So, boom. Yeah? It's going to be a sharp movement. Bam. 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 And now we need to add it to the step that we're taking on top of our circle. So it looks like this. 1 and shoot. ki da, ba ki da, ba ki da. Sharp, 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 sharp. Yes? Let's try to the music. Find your pulse, a little one. And 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1,
Yes, I'm
2,
alone
3,
in this here
4,
town.
5, 6, 7, 8. 1,
My good time buddies
3,
have put
4,
me down.
5, 6, 7, and 8. Now, there are also ways to experiment with that movement. I let you do that on your own. You can think about adding some extra hip bumps to one side, like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Yeah. Think about the hands, the way they move. Because of my upper body movement, I turn to the side. Yeah, I kind of tend to look at my hip when it's going. Yeah, my hands kind of sway around with me, so this is the most natural movement of my hands that's gonna happen. But you can also work with that. There are many cool ways to work with your hands on any movement, to be honest, like cha, 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 cha. Yeah, find your way. It also doesn't really have to be very sharp. This is just a variation that I like, but it can be very small and very smooth, something like this even, yeah, and not really emphasizing the hip bump. It can be very big, and then the hip bump can be really small, yeah, so you can play with a lot of stuff here. I let you experiment on your own. The final move that we're gonna learn today is called the C hips. Now, I couldn't find a quote about the C hips, but I would guess, just judging from its form, that was also the parts of the black bottom dance that was done in the juke joints. The C hips looks like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So why is it called the C hips? Because we kind of draw the letter C with our hips. We go up, and then to the middle, and then down. The hip bump in here is going to be very similar to the one in four corners. So we go from grounded to straight with a hip bump to the side, and then we have to ground and ground, yeah, in two parts. So straight, ground, ground, yeah? And we shift our weight only on the final part of it. So here I'm still standing on my left leg, still standing on my left leg, and then the right leg. Let's try it with the counts from the back. 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now to the music.
I'm in the mood for love.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I'm in the mood.
1,
I'm in the
2,
mood.
3, 4, 5,
Baby,
6, 7.
I'm in the mood for love.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This move is great for moving forward. Ta 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 ta. And of course, you can play with the height here, so you can go much lower than I'm doing just right now. Ta ki ta ta ki ta ta ki ta ta ki ta. Well, this is up to your artistic choice. So that was it. Now it's up to you to practice those moves and find your own variations, find your own styling. Yeah, whether it's the amplitude or the height or something with the hands or something different with the rhythm even. Those were some classic juke joint moves. And when we practice them, don't forget to add some basic blues feeling to it. The pulse and the posture, at least those two things that we have discussed. Of course, there are many other aspects of blues dancing that we just don't have time to discuss today, but if you're interested, dig for them, ask people, come to their classes, and I'm sure you're gonna find many interesting things. Thank you for coming to this online class, and I hope to see you soon on the dance floor.